Right, so we are officially live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Live with OKclarity.com, the live that's going to bring you clarity on Pesach and how to thrive through Pesach. I'm going to now just check Instagram to hit live there, Michali. That I still have to do. But yes.
Amazing.
Okay.
I'm really excited to do this live with you, Faye.
Amazing. Let me just hit live, go live. Okay, yes, we are live on Instagram.
Yay.
Go back here and I'll just check up that we're showing up on our website. Refresh. It's actually nice. Like we could just talk from here. And
then it like uploads it everywhere.
Yes. And like we don't have like the distraction of the Instagram, and we are showing up on the website. So we're good. All right. So let's hit it, Michali. So I know that we got so many questions. It was really all about how to handle like the dread. I feel like everything was about dreading Pesach. Like that was really like, I messaged you this morning. You're like very thematic. I wasn't sure like if there was a tone in that when you responded to me.
No, totally not. I was just like, this is like literally everyone is saying the same thing in different ways, basically.
Exactly. Like I asked for like I wanted to know if there was something specific that we could address to at least to have something specific to frame our talk around. But it really seems like everything is all about just this fear of dread.
Yeah.
And, I mean, of course, somebody said, I have kids home, or like the kids are stressing me out. The teenagers are stressing me out. So, of course, whatever we share today, hopefully will be able to be applied to that. But the concept, really the overarching theme was a lot of dread. And that right away makes me think that this is not about Pesach. It's it's about how we're defining this time of year, like what Pesach means to me, to us.
Yeah.
Because and I'm not saying that none of it has to do with Pesach directly. Of course it does, but it's a lot of it. I think is the meaning that we attach to it, what we make about what Pesach means to us. Like I know for me it means like, oh my God, it's Pesach and I'm still single. For somebody else it might mean I'm Pesach. Yeah. It's Pesach and I don't know what else could it mean for someone that's married like you, Michali. I'm trying to think like will encompass with being single, but
it's not that I'm still single. It's Pesach.
I mean, you don't have to have something to share. I'm just saying.
I don't know if I have. I don't know if I relate to it that on like a annual level. It's more just like for me, it's more like it's Pesach and oh my gosh, there's so much to do. How am I going to get it done with 150?
100%. Yeah, that's totally more like a motherly kind of like reaction. For me, being single, it's like revolving around me being single. Of course, I'm involved in the Pesach prep, but that's more like something that I'm actually like excited about. Versus
and family is very lucky.
Say it again.
And your family is very lucky over.
Yes, that is true. But it's less of like the burden. Although I'm sure there will be times that I'm like thinking, oh my God, this is crazy. Like it's too much, too stressful. Yeah. So I think that for everybody it means something different, and I think that's like I just wanted to put that out there in terms of like it's the meaning behind it, and I think understanding what the meaning is for you. And of course, I have other things to share, but I want to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, and I would just say in that like more zoomed out perspective before we get into like the specific solutions that you and I have come up with, and I'm sure there's like dozens more, but is that if like I love what you said that Pesach's not today, right? Like today is April 8th, right? Yes. So we've got 2 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not now in this moment right now. Am I doing Pesach prep? No. Right now, I'm sitting in a very comfy chair in a lovely office, speaking to the lovely Faye, right? And I'm not doing Pesach stuff. I'm not in there. So if if my body is feeling anxious, if my mind is feeling stressed, then that is an anxiety, right? Like that is something that's projected onto the future, something from the future that's projected onto the present, right? And so that has less to do with even Pesach and religion and has everything to do with just how do we navigate anxiety, which this is literally the definition for, which is I am feeling stressed about something that's not happening to me right now. And I'm anticipating something and that's causing me stress. Then if we add to it the communal piece and the cultural piece, right, then we're adding other stressors like my marital status and how that impacts me at this part of the year, right? It also might mean, how socialized I am versus how lonely and isolated I am, or It could be familial. Like, what are my dynamics with my family? Are they good? Are they so-so? Are they terrible? And how that fits in. And then you add the religious piece, which is, well, what's my relationship like with this religion? And am I in a good place? Even if I have a decent relationship with it, am I in a good place now? Are there things that have come up recently or in this past year that I've been struggling with that are making it harder or easier for me to connect with this specific yontiv? Like, so I think there's so many different buckets when it comes to what can contribute to the dread. But I think just very like on a very basic level, we're talking about anxiety, right? Because it's not happening to us right now, this second, right?
Yeah.
And then we're projecting all of that onto how we're feeling in this moment.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you said that. Like I did not in thinking about this live in this conversation, I did not even like anxiety did not even cross my mind, which is funny.
Neither. I thought of it just now on the spot.
It's so true. And I would just add to what you said, which I think is kind of what you said anyway. The communal piece, I think, really feeds into this anxiety. It's almost like you're weird if you're not having Pesach anxiety, which is something I wanted to address. It's like
I'm judged almost. Like, it's like, oh, you're
yeah,
not.
it's society. This is society normal right now. Like my brother was saying, there was a cute meme that said like everyone can talk about on because the earthquake happened on Friday. So there was a meme that said like, did you feel the earthquake is going to replace your small talk tonight in shul instead of talking about what are your plans for Pesach? Which I think is just very apropos for like, this is what everybody is consumed with right now. And that feeds the anxiety, but it's like, it's everybody's anxiety bleeding onto the next person to help them have anxiety. So maybe their anxiety would be lessened.
For sure. I love that part, that like addition that you're bringing, because I think, yeah, I think also there's like judgment mixed with like this sense of like how good you are, if like depending on when you start preparing for Pesach. So if you're one of those people that starts preparing Hanukkah time or Purim time or 2 weeks before Yantiv or like 4 days before Yantiv, then people are going to think different things, right? Like people, like then it's almost like it's the same thing as you telling someone, like I don't do anything all day and I just kind of like watch TV and like don't do anything, versus like I never see my family because I'm like working like 16 hours a day, right? Like people are going to have a feeling about either, extreme scenario, and they're going to judge you based on what you say. And it's the same thing with like Pesach prep. It's like, depending on when you start prep, then people are going to kind of like put you and categorize you and label you. And there's like pressure with that. And sometimes people look at you, if you, let's say, prep 4 days before, like, wow, you're amazing. And then another camp might be like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? And like, I would have a nervous breakdown, right? And so it's not like one is inherently good or bad. It's just people are going to have different feelings about that and respond accordingly. So it just adds to the overwhelm and pressure, because when we think about navigating Pesach, we're contending with all these invisible dynamics, whether we're conscious of them or not.
Yes, the invisible dynamics. I like that phrase. Invisible dynamics. Yeah, that's true. Like there's so many, and I'm sure we didn't even say half of them. But that's there. So I guess like from that framework, it's anxiety. So like, okay, it's anxiety. But I think that by the time maybe people will be watching this or listening to this, it will already be that maybe they will be dealing with actual Pesach prep. So I guess that isn't in and of itself stressful on many levels. And then I guess we could talk about, it depends the direction you want to take it in. Should we talk about the anxiety? I know we're limited by time. Should we talk about more tips on how to navigate the 2 to 4 weeks before? Well, we're already way past the 4-week mark. So the a week to 2 weeks before. I'm living in a state right now. You could tell that we're the 4 days before camp.
Right.
But that's still, yeah.
You have plenty of time, Faye.
We just decided like where we'll actually be. Decide like, okay, when do we actually do things?
Right. You're still eating your shalachmanos,
Totally.
So I think we should do a combo. I think any ideas, like practical solutions, whether it's to navigate feelings right now in Pesach prep, or just like kind of, a relationship with it. I don't know. I just think
Right.
anything that can be
Yeah,
practiced.
I think like something I was thinking of, like, obviously to validate and normalize, it sounds cliche and it is cliche, but it's really important. Like if you're struggling, you have to realize that you're not the only one. We can promise you that just from the amount
Yeah,
of questions we've gotten of how many people are dreading for whatever reason
yeah,
and struggling with the reality. And I think part of this preparation talk, since we're on that, I actually had a point on here, which is to really emotionally and physically prepare. And I don't mean like physically prepare, maybe start cooking and peeling your potatoes. That's maybe one part of it, if that's your, situation, but more about like the physical preparation that you need for your emotional health and your emotional preparation. And I think part of emotional preparation is really like talking about your feelings. Like if you're really struggling with Pesach coming up and it's really a sense of dread for you, then getting that out in a way that feels cathartic. So whether that's talking to a therapist, whether that's talking to friends, whether that's sending messages to our NGL, whatever it is, crying about it, journaling about it, I really think getting it out, even though it sounds like maybe you're making it worse by doing that. I happen to take the side of like, no, if you're having these emotions, better that you don't stifle them,
like release them.
release them. Exactly.
Yeah,
And coupled with that, at the same time, to remind yourself that anticipation anxiety is worse than the actual event. That's like a big one for me. I am like such a person for anticipation anxiety. Like I'm always so anxious before things, and then I'm fine like in them. Even before this live, like I was so anxious. I like, again, so anxious to a degree, but definitely more anxious than I am right now. And the same is true, I think, for anything. Like I know as I was thinking about this live, I was thinking about when I was turning 30, and I know I spoke openly about that, how hard that was for me. And I can't even tell you like enough how the anticipation of that moment, of that age, was so much worse than the actual, obviously, event and everything thereafter. And what really got me through that was the talking through it, and the journaling through it, and the praying through it, and the crying through it, and giving myself all those emotional supports and even physical supports, like saying, this is exactly how I want my day to go. I want to go, with my family here, and I want to do this, and I want to pray, this. And I really prepared. So I think that giving yourself, if you're dreading something or something big is coming up, and for Pesach, that could be for many people, that's that big thing, giving yourself that emotional and physical preparation time, like 2 weeks before, is
yeah.
a nice amount of time to do that.
I love that. And I appreciate the intentionality behind that also. So it's not like we're falling into something and hoping that it's going to turn out, and that like the anticipatory anxiety is going to be just the worst part of it. And then we hope for the best, but we're actually we take back control, and we're making that happen in any way that we can, right? By thinking about what is going to ground us, what is going to calm us, what is going to help us enjoy this time. And along those lines, I would also, like one thing that really helps me in terms of like dealing with anticipatory anxiety, because like I definitely like, when I'm thinking about like Pesach and making Pesach, like I definitely have this like moment when I haven't done anything yet, where I'm like, it's like one big blob of like, oh my gosh, it's so huge, and how's this going to fit into everything? um, I start we call it partializing in the therapy world. It's like a clinical skill. It's basically, it's essentially, it's making lists of the things that you want to do and need to do, including the physical, including the emotional, um, and then really making it happen, meaning looking like sitting down, looking at your schedule and putting a time and place for each one of those things. And so then when the anxiety comes up, then you have something to answer it, right? You can say to it, oh, I know that's a really valid point. That is something that you are worried about. And look, we have that on Monday at 2:15. Look at that. It's taken care of, right?
Mhm.
And so then you can just like kind of relax knowing that like you've taken care of that need. I think also, I just have to say this, and I'm sure many of the people listening have heard this concept before, but I just feel like I have to say this still, is that there is a huge difference between a halachic Pesach and what I like to call an OCD Pesach. And there's nothing wrong with OCD. I love OCD, but I think it would be very adaptive and amazing. But I think there is a difference. So depending on which Pesach you're following, right? That's going to also impact the anxiety level that a person's experiencing, right? So for example, if I'm going to be feeling right now like I need to clean every single crevice in my home, um, I will stop breathing. I just can't do that right now. But if I think to myself, wait a minute, we have a rule in my house, we don't bring food upstairs. So I don't need to check my upstairs for chametz. I don't need to organize my upstairs right now, because that is literally, there's no chametz upstairs. So I can just focus on where the food is, and halachically, then that is 100% what I'm supposed to be doing, right? So I think that also, like, one thing that can also bring the anxiety down is asking yourself, what do I absolutely actually have to do, based on my level of observance and what my values are, and what are things that I would like to do, but maybe because there's so much going on right now in this stage of the year, maybe now's not the best time for me to do it. Maybe I'll do my spring cleaning or whatever in July, and I think that also can take a lot of pressure off and take like the weight off of people's shoulders, of just like, okay, there's a difference and there's less to do. When we have 100 tasks that we have to do, of course we're going to be overwhelmed. When we bring that down to 20, then all of a sudden it becomes a little more manageable.
I love
So
that.
yeah, those are just a couple of ideas. I have a few more, but
Yeah, for sure. And I think what you had said, like the partializing, I guess that like the things I want to do versus the things I need to do would fall
yeah,
into those lists. And I love that.
exactly.
And then like when something pops up, even if it's not scheduled in your calendar, even if it's like, this is something I want to do and I'll deal with it after Pesach, or this is more of like something I can't do anything about, but I wrote it down and I'll try to maybe talk to a friend about it if it's something that's worrying me. Whether it's a relationship dynamic or something that's not like, it can't be scheduled into your calendar. I know it's funny because we're both very similar in the way that we have
Yeah,
calendars.
we're like, okay, anytime I want to talk, what's your schedule like?
Exactly. So we're kind of like assuming, I think, unfairly that everybody is like that on some level. So
Yeah,
I want to just like, make that a point as well. You need some level of executive function to even do that skill, but
yeah.
it's definitely a skill that's worthy of working towards. Like, I don't know how somebody manages anxiety without having a method of lists and organization. Like, I think that's really
Oh,
important. Like,
for sure. And I would just, add a little bit of, an outside source to this. James Clear, which I know you like.
yeah.
In his book, Atomic Habits, like he talks about that whenever you're trying to do something, like giving something a very specific time and place can be helpful. Now, I agree with you, Faye. Like, I don't think that like everything that pops into our head needs to have a specific time. I think that if it's something that's creating fear/anxiety, then it could be very soothing to give it a time and place. So for example, let's say, I mean, it happens to be I'm not feeling this way, but let's say I tell myself, okay, Michali, you're only doing a halachic Pesach. So that means like none of your drawers or closets or anything are going to be organized, right? And let's say that stress keeps popping up in my mind over and over and over again as I am cleaning for Pesach, right? So then if I'm noticing that this fear, this stress is coming up over and over again, that's when I might do this thing where I'll say, okay, I'm looking at my calendar, July 2nd, I have an hour from 10 to 11. I can do one drawer and one closet, or, like I can start putting it there. So I know that the things that are important to me are not forgotten and they have a time and place. But I would say only if that's something that keeps coming up. If it's something that it's like, in the moment stress, like you're having a wave of like, how am I gonna get this done? Then I think journaling that, talking to yourself with compassion, calling up a friend who gets it, I think those strategies can be immensely, immensely helpful.
I love that. Okay, I know we have like 2 more minutes. Is there another like quick tip that you wanted to share? Because you said you had a few more.
Oh yeah. So okay, I wrote these down. So okay, so it happens to be Pesach is my absolute favorite holiday. And I know many people listening are gonna be like,
Really? Hanukkah?
"How
I
can you?"
thought we said both. I thought we talked about this and you said Hanukkah was your favorite.
Oh no, I love Hanukkah, but I always growing up, for some reason, it was like jinx. I always ended up getting sick on Hanukkah, which was the
Wow.
saddest thing.
Okay.
Always like random things. But I love Pesach.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
um and I think one of the things that I love about Pesach, and in general, like all the Yom Tovim, I love how cyclical they are, because, and I know this has come up in other, conversations that you and I have done, where it's like you get to really do like a great like cheshbon nefesh and like introspect and appreciate the struggles that you've gone through in the year and the differences between where you are now and last year, even if it's very minimal. Like I don't look for like, oh my gosh, this is a new improved Michali, you know, and like, wow, the transformation. I'm not looking for that, but it's just like, wait, where was I last year? On these like little levels, like, you know, how did I help people? Or was I present more this year? Or did I remember to be more grounded within myself, right? Like these little things that I may be working on, right? So I think for me, one of the things that I really like to do for Pesach, and this also kind of, it doesn't change the anxiety level. It's just, it kind of adds more stuff into the mix. So it's almost like filtering it. Like, I don't even know if I saw this on OKclarity or somewhere else, where like there's this video where there's like a cup filled with mud, and then you see someone like pouring clean water into it, right, from a faucet, and they say like, this is what, like, you know, positive like stuff does to all the negative stuff, and you just hold the cup filled with dirt and you watch the water kind of clean it out automatically over time, right? And so I think this is kind of like that kind of strategy where it's like I'm adding more positive stuff. I'm not necessarily like taking out actively the hard stuff. And for me, the positive stuff, and everyone is different, but I would encourage people to find what their positive thing is. It's really coming up with a way to connect to the messages and themes of the holiday and like really make meaning out of it. And I think to personally connect to it. So for example, I know that, you know, there's been so many conversations about the Aguna crisis, you know, over these past many months. And so, so if you or someone that you know is in that place, like really identifying with the part of the Seder that's all about being enslaved and what it means, what does freedom mean, like really defining that. And then if you are lucky to not be an Aguna, like appreciating your freedom and asking yourself, what do I want to do with this freedom, right? Or you know, going through something really challenging, right? And thinking about like the strength that it took to go through that, and appreciating all of that, and then kind of connecting it to the story of the Haggadah and stuff like that. You know, like you can find so many ways to connect to it, but I think when you personalize it, that's what makes it meaningful. And then you can turn that into whether you do Divrei Torah at your Seder, or you can like get yourself a special gift that has to do with that message, or you can sit down and journal about it. But you can like really look at the whole, you know, holiday as like an opportunity to connect to and appreciate that like personalized meaning, you know. So I think that's another way to kind of like transform Pesach and add some positivity to it.
I love that. I love that. I was just so like totally in what you were saying, and I love the analogy that you gave with the cup because I've seen
Yeah,
that video too. I can't remember. I'm sure we posted it at some point on
I'm
OKclarity.
sure.
Not an OKclarity original, but the point is that I love that analogy, and it's so true. And I think that wherever people are spiritually, maybe, you know, that won't fit for them, but however you could pour something beautiful into like the cup, keep just flowing in something positive to kind of neutralize at the very least, and ideally purify your experience.
Exactly. And that can be also during, it doesn't have to be at the Seder itself. It can be like, I am in love with music. So I am blasting really fun music when I'm doing hard Pesach prep.
Yes.
And I will get myself yummy food treats because I'm a foodie. And so I'll enjoy that. And I'll also, like, I know you and I had discussed this also in another live, like I'll move slowly. So I'm not like giving myself the message that like this is a stressful thing. I try to make the experience as positive as possible. It doesn't take away from the annoying pieces of the tasks that I'm doing, but it like you said, it almost like purifies it a little bit, and just makes it a little bit, it makes my experience and my association with those tasks a little bit sweeter.
I love that. I love that. I know that we're like a tiny bit over time. I'm gonna check Instagram just to see if there's anything specific that we should any questions. I don't even see any questions. That's cool. Alrighty, should we wrap? Do you want to check see if we got anything on any other questions? Let's see. I'm just checking.
Um, let's see.
I don't see anything yet. They usually come in after. All right. No, I think this was great. I mean, like, I think there's so much more we can say. In an ideal world, we would talk for like another hour.
Yeah, of all the nuances, like if you have teenagers or
Exactly.
tired kids, or like if you don't feel welcomed at your family theater, like there's so many other
So
pieces.
many things. There's so many things. And I guess like the one thing I would say is that like similar to like coming full circle, like if Pesach for you is not this time that's like your whole world is kind of turned around because of Pesach, because you don't have you're not in like a typical transitional or typical phase in your life. Maybe you're in some other phase or transition, and not to get swept away with it, like to really stay grounded in who you are and what every other day of your life is like, in the sense that like it's okay if you're not thinking Pesach till the day before because you're just going to somebody and that's your Pesach, and or you're, you know what I'm saying, like it's okay if right now you're just doing your whatever your job or your work is, and that's like what consumes you, like not to give yourself that extra judgment or shame if you're not completely obsessed with Pesach right now. Or
Right. In the good and the bad.
correct,
Right.
correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess that's like a nice way of just wrapping, coming full circle. Of course, there's so many more things that we could say, but hopefully this was some food for thought, and I hope it was helpful. And as usual, Michali, it's always a pleasure chatting with you. So thank you for that time. And now we can let everybody go and catch the eclipse that is happening. Are you having it?
Wear your protective gear.
I don't actually don't have protective gear, so I'm just gonna I'm not gonna look up at the sky. But are you having it in Baltimore as well?
It's a partial. Yeah, but yeah, I'm gonna just like peek, but I don't either have any protective gear. So I'm probably gonna stay inside, you know. I already did my walk, you know, beforehand. So just like I'm like, just in case, I don't know what happens with the UV rays or whatever. I'm like, I have no idea.
The world ends suddenly, you know, you never know.
Of course. Pesach, eclipse, you know.
All right.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure.
Take care. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.